Also coming out with the senior team tonight is the NPLMVIC Dandenong. Those teams are coming out. So big round of applause when they come.
Sorry, that's in the way. here. Good, good. How are you? Yeah, okay.
I'm going to try and get it fixed and hopefully I can call maybe in the second half with you.
So, yeah, exactly. No, 100%. No,
You'll be right for the first?
I'll be fine. Take care of what you need to take care of. Yeah. And even if you can't get back to the second, don't worry about me. Just take care of what you need to do.
Can you try speak on the microphone?
Yeah. Testing, testing, 1, 2, testing. Testing, testing, 1, 2, testing. Well, they started late. They had a 40-minute talk. So that means, so they're not on purpose. They are. We've done that. I understand.
Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause for the under-11s coming out with the senior by Dandenong City for the round 10 clash between Dandenong City and South Melbourne.
Frank Holohan Soccer Complex plays host as Dandy City welcomes South Melbourne to the southeast for this round 10 NPL men's fixture between Nick Tolios' City side and Esteban Quintos' league-topping South Melbourne outfit. Friday night football set to get underway. It's a cool evening in Melbourne southeast. We're just a little bit delayed with our kickoff, but all is in readiness as Lockie Keevers does his final check that the numbers are correct on each side. We just pause momentarily as Esteban Quintos continues his discussion with the FB official. We are now underway at Frank Holohan. Dandy City, who've exceeded just about every expectation placed on them so far this season to sit 7th after 9 games, take on South Melbourne, who sit clear on top of the league as we head into this weekend's set of fixtures. My name is Oscar Rutherford. Thank you for your company in what is sure to be a fascinating contest between two teams with contrasting play styles. As we see early on, South Melbourne looking to pin back their hosts as they tend to do. A couple of changes to each lineup heading into tonight's game. For the hosts, Dandenong City, Matt Hennessy and Damien Iaconis are into the starting 11. James Zidius has been dropped to the bench, whilst Will Bauer is unavailable for selection. We'll pause that as we go with the first long throw of the evening, sent in by Max Mikola for South Melbourne. Mikola follows it up with another cross, and it's not exactly a clean take from John Hall in the Dandy City goal, but the referee has picked out a foul. South Melbourne also making a couple of changes to their lineup, and they've opted for youth, or Esteban Quintas has opted for youth, with Emil Payos and Cooper Halfpenny being brought into the starting 11. They've taken the place of Andy Brennan and Mario Barcia. Andy Brennan on the bench for tonight's contest. Dandy City hoping to continue their recent unbeaten run, a fourth consecutive league game it would be if they were to come away with a point or more from tonight's contest. South Melbourne can go a few better though. They're looking for a 10th league game unbeaten to begin season 2024. You throw in their Doherty Cup win against the Melbourne Knights and it takes their total to 11 games without a defeat under Esteban Quintas in the current season. A couple of early involvements from our central referee, Lockie Keevers. And Michael Martinovic will send this free kick long towards his striker, Kenny Athieu, who hits the deck and he was clipped on his way down. I believe it was Jake Marshall with the infringement. Didn't look particularly intentional, but slightly sloppy with his footing. And an early set-piece opportunity for Dandenong City in what is really their first foray into the final third. So an early test for the South Melbourne defence. As we see with the left and a right-footed option. It's the right that takes it. It's overhit, though, by Brady Quinn. And so for the first time tonight, Harvey Lopez will take the goal kick for South Melbourne. This, of course, the first meeting between these two teams since Dandy City made their way back into the top flight for this season. Just the 5 games played in the NPL era between these two teams in the league. South Melbourne picking up 3 wins to Dandenong City's 1. Although worth noting that all 3 of South Melbourne's wins have ended with a 1-0 scoreline. So perhaps that's foreshadowing what we are to expect tonight. See the press from Dandy City roared on other City players by their coach Nick Tolios. Marshall wins the header, looking for Max Mikola. Ball sent forward by Lampard. A couple of strong early defences from the host tonight. Lambatarides unable to keep control. Mentioned that it is just the one win for Dandenong City in the 5 league meetings between these two teams. Although, very much worth noting that that 1 win is Dandy's biggest home win in NPL history. 3-0 they beat South Melbourne back in 2019. Early cross sent in. And a chance for Mikola. But now City will look to start from the back with Sesnick. Lambatarides retreats to the experienced central defender in Jack Webster. Plays it to one of the inclusions in tonight's 11 for Nick Tolios, Matt Hennessy. Martinovic is the target once again. He was contested in the air by Morgan Evans, who did a good enough job to come away with the throw. That 3-0 win for Dandy City against South Melbourne back in 2019. Safe to say both teams looking pretty different from that meeting 5 years ago here at Frank Holohan Soccer Complex. Brendan Santalab scored 2 of the goals for Dandy. In a team that also featured the likes of Adrian Layer and Carl Valeri. Ball sent in by Lampard is a deep one. It hits the back of Payos, and Kim taking no chances as he sends it clear. Just a final point on that 3-0 game. The only survivor in the South Melbourne team from that lineup is at the heart of defence tonight, Jake Marshall. This is Lambatarides. Important intervention from Kenny Atthew. Kim. This is Quinn. Almost intercepted by his own teammate, Kim. Now Atthew runs into Emil Payos. And Dandy City will be able to reset once again. So a positive start for Nick Tolios' team. They've been able to control the majority of the possession early on. This is Sesnik, tries the tight turn. And now the long ball over the top will have to be dealt with by Hennessy. South Melbourne have shown on several occasions this season their capacity to press with great effectiveness. And see that isn't the early game strategy from Esteban Quintas. Happy to allow Dandy a bit of space and time on the ball, at least in their own half, that is. Martinovic takes the throw. Halfpenny heads it out, so it's some territory gained for City. Martinovic is again on throw-in duties. This one isn't as effective. Sawyer was closely watched by Hennessy. And you hear the instructions barked out from Jack Webster at the back. The 33-year-old telling his team to squeeze up the pitch, make it difficult for South to get out of their own half. Although Sawyer does make that process a little bit easier. That's a really clever pass from Bernarda out towards Mikola. Webster coming across, couldn't stop his run. Mikola gets the shot away. And it's a relatively comfortable save for John Hall. But a promising attacking move from South. Danger in the attempt to play out from Hennessy. Does come away with the throw in any case. Firm coming together in the middle of the park. And Lockie Keever's deeming George Lambatarides to be the offender. Well, so far, this first 10 minutes has been very much an even contest, and we're seeing the contrast in styles as Jankovic goes direct with the free kick. Halfpenny keeps the chance alive. So you saw his idea as he headed it to the feet of Mikola. Now Payos, it's a good cross, driven hard and low. And Marko Jankovic didn't quite connect sweetly with that one. Still the chance continues. This is Sawyer. It's a really important block put in by Thomas Giannakopoulos. And the young central defender playing out in the fullback position tonight. He's caught plenty of eyes early in his NPL Victoria career. Coming across from the Adelaide Comets, Giannakopoulos showing his nous for goal scoring as well. And here he is getting up the pitch, as he so often does. This is Kim. See the triangle pass involving Lambatarides and Hennessy. And now Martinovic couldn't quite get it back to Quinn. And now South will look to hit on the counter. Bernarda's touch could find its way into the feet of Harry Sawyer. And it is an exquisite finish from the man leading the Golden Boot race early in season 2024. He doesn't need much of a chance, Harry Sawyer, to make you pay, and he showed it right there. A delightful finish just inside the far post. And despite a really competitive opening to this game, it is South Melbourne, as they so often do, who have found a way to get themselves in front. And all of a sudden the task for Dandy City becomes all that greater. And with that goal, as we stand, South Melbourne moving 6 points clear on top of the NPL men's table. That's 6 points being ahead of Avondale, currently in second, yet to play this weekend, of course. West Heidelberg, who are playing at the same time tonight, just kicked off about half an hour earlier, or 15 minutes earlier, I should say. And the Berg is currently trailing 1-0 at home to Moreland City, so perhaps an upset brewing. And Dandy City will be hoping for a similar kind of situation here. And Lambatarides was looking really dangerous there on the edge of the box. Mikola forced to be patient. That goal, Harry Sawyer's 9th of the campaign. That's a really nice touch from Archibald. Attempt to return. Still the chance goes on. Dandy City try to clear it. Eventually City do escape, at least for now. You just see how dangerous South Melbourne are every time they go forward. The sheer quality that they have in attack. Even Ross Archibald getting high up the pitch. Mikola, who we've seen a lot of in the early exchanges in this game. The pass, though, from Lampard is very comfortable for Hall. And so, what do Dandenong City have in response? Matthew. Now the crossfield ball in the direction of Quinn. Some calls for handball, but referee not obliging. Payos managed to keep the ball in play. Quinn thought it was going to be out for a throw. Still Payos sends across along the deck. Once again, Dandy City find a response. Mikola, this time from the broadcast side, sends in the long throw. Matthew hoping for Webster, almost turned into a bit of trouble. And this is real danger for South Melbourne, the giveaway. In a glorious position, which just couldn't be capitalised on by Valley Cesnik. Well, that's as good a chance as Dandy City have had early in this game. And just a moment of defensive panic for South Melbourne. It wasn't an easy opportunity for Cesnik, and he wasn't able to keep his shot down. So Evans will come across to take this throw. Sawyer looks to return it to his fullback and does so effectively. Now Archibald plays the ball across. Time and time again, a really vital intervention from one of the Dandy City defenders. They've all stepped in at moments, dealing with not easy situations. Bombarded with some early crosses and long throws. Bernarda asked to chase, but Giannakopoulos was there in time. This is Bernarda again. Gets the cross away. Webster was well positioned. Payos. Clever exchange. Looks to set Payos away. Looks to take on Hennessy, but Hennessy read the ball just a little bit better, and then Martinovic is on the receiving end of a pretty clear-cut foul. So that'll relieve some of the pressure on the hosts. Dandy City coming off the back of that 0-0 draw away at Hume last weekend. It's a more impressive result than it looks on the face of it. Hume City high-flying this season, and particularly in front of goal. As we see Bernarda a little bit too physical for Lockie Keever's liking. Managing to keep out that Hume City attack. No mean feat, and City achieved it. But of course, unable to replicate that already tonight against the South Melbourne machine. And well, as symptomatic perhaps of the challenge Dandy City have faced so far, we just haven't seen enough of the likes of Kenny Athieu and particularly Damien Iaconis. Iaconis, who we haven't seen a great deal of so far this season. The real opportunity to make an impact. That long ball won't be causing the Dandy City defence a whole lot of trouble, I should say. Already mentioned the Heidelberg-Moreland City game currently underway. Still one more fixture kicking off in around about 5 minutes tonight as Oakley hosts St Albans. So Heidelberg South and Oakley all taking to the field against opposition they'd be warm favourites to beat. South Melbourne perhaps on paper facing the toughest task. But so far they've dealt with it pretty comfortably. This is Archibald. Looks cross-field towards Bernarda. And now Mikola looks to send away Lampard. There was a really important touch from Cesnik to break up the attack. And not for the first time tonight. The attempted crossfield through ball just has a little bit too much juice on it. Well, we'll have to see if City will be any more effective at spending some time locking South Melbourne into their own half. Webster. Tempted combination between Sesnick and Kim doesn't work out. And it's really been the drawback of this early contest for Dandy City. Those attacking moves just haven't quite found that connection that we've seen at times this season. There's just a little bit of discontent from the South Melbourne team at some of the treatment that their teammates have been getting. And a seemingly harmless moment is just threatened to become something a little bit more serious. Lockie Keevers looks to have quickly settled down any tensions. And now he's just having a chat with Jack Webster. Well, the war of words between both technical boxers. It's providing plenty of off-field entertainment as well. But finally we are back underway with the football. Halfpenny cut out by Lambatarides. And foul called the way of South Melbourne. South Melbourne were to hold on for all 3 points tonight, it would be a second win in 3 games against Dandenong outfit. Of course, having gotten the win at George Andrews just a couple of rounds ago. That one a 2-1 scoreline. So South Melbourne very much know what it takes to come to this part of the city and pick up 3 points. This is Evans. It's a good delivery in. Webster positioned himself nicely, and Archibald wasn't lacking power with that attempt. It didn't exactly set up any of his teammates with it either. Matthew, we see dropping a bit deeper as he's felt a little bit isolated from the game. It's another coming together between Webster and Sawyer. Referee happy to let the play continue. Now out to the left-hand side where Bernarda is. Plays it back to Payos, who puts in the cross. And the blocked attempt means it will be a corner. And still we've got some afters going on. It's not been a friendly start to this game. Just bubbling away in this first 25 minutes of action. And referee Lucky Keevers just doing well to keep a lid on it. And well, as ever, a mention for fourth official, Daniel Ilievsky is getting an earful from both directions tonight. And you can imagine that will continue for the majority of it as the corner is delivered in. Matthew was at the front post. Second attempt. Again, the header away is only temporary. Mikola for the third time now, the header in. South Melbourne have their second. It's Ross Archibald who headed it into the back of the net. 3 successive deliveries into the box from South, and eventually the Dandy City defence could hold out no longer. And South Melbourne have put themselves in a commanding position in the first half hour of this game. First through Harry Sawyer, and now through Ross Archibald. And they really have, just as the first half's continued, struggled more and more to get out of their own half, and particularly their final third. And the barrage of South Melbourne deliveries into the area has eventually paid dividends. And Esteban Quintas very happy with those sorts of efforts from Emil Payos, who's been heavily involved at the start of this game, including from those set-piece situations. A player who's been a little bit in and out of the starting 11 for South, has Emil Payos. Well, you can see on nights like tonight the benefits of having real competition for spots. Payos playing like someone with a point to prove. Some calls for a high boot. Nothing given. Lambatarides out to the right-hand side now. Sesnick, his through ball is blocked. Lambatarides again tries to slide a teammate in behind. But it's South Melbourne who come away with the ball. Sawyer's the target of the cross. And he just got underneath the shot. But still, South Melbourne are just lethal on the counter. And perhaps finally a concession of sorts from Nick Tolios' team as they just go with the long and direct goal kick rather than attempting to patiently play their way through. Although we've ended up in that situation in any case. Dandy City, you can see the cogs turning in the team as they look for a way through. It's just so difficult with how strongly South Melbourne is set up out of possession. Evans wins the header, and Kim cops a shove from Payos. It's really only been the free kicks that have been the reprieve for Dandy City, especially over the last 20 minutes. You really get the sense more and more that that first goal from Harry Sawyer was a vital moment, just with the way that it's taken a bit of the sting out of Dandy City. Lampard uses Halfpenny. And now Marshall out to Yankovic. Dandy again take their chance to press. Once more South Melbourne, well, they have that release in the form of Harry Sawyer. The attack, though, continues for the hosts. Martinovic will get another opportunity for a throw. And this time they opt to go a little bit quicker. Hennessy. Kim into Lambatarides. Webster out to Giannakopoulos. Back central to Lambatarides. He's looking out to the left-hand side. That is where he heads. Martinovic. Thinks about the shot. He goes for it himself. And that wasn't very far away. Just narrowly pulled wide of the post. And Michael Martinovic, I think, had Javi Lopez scrambling just for half a second, but the experienced goalkeeper was covering the post to his right. Sawyer again, he's just been so important in this game, the way it's panned out. To be fair, as he tends to be. Well, you can see Esteban Quintas getting right up into the space of Emil Payos to congratulate him and encourage him further. Archibald. Sawyer now. Thinks about delivering the cross himself. Indeed he does. And Lambatarides was in the right position to send it away. And Max Mikkola makes his way over to retrieve the ball and send in another of his long throws. Mikkola does send it in. Hall attempts to come out and claim, and he does so effectively. Looks for the quick release. You see 3 Dandy players in the South Melbourne half. They were there and ready to pounce if they were able to take control. Iaconis's touch. Halfpenny. Lambatarides. Only as far as Marshall. And still we continue. Mikkola retreats to his central defender. Hennessy has a couple of South Melbourne players lurking around him. He showed great composure to find Webster with his pass. Sesnick back to Martinovic. Archibald got a foot in. But there are enough City numbers to regain possession. Well, amongst other things, South Melbourne now on track for their biggest NPL win against Dandenong City. What is the first time in an NPL game that South Melbourne have scored more than 1 goal against Dandy. Lambatarides. Very much forced to rely on these somewhat speculative through balls, whether on the deck or in the air. Have Dandenong City and South Melbourne, you'd imagine, would gobble those up all night, as they have for the whole of this first half. Sawyer did enough to get it to the ground, where Archibald almost took control. Sesnick in towards Kim. And now Kim showing some ambition on the ball. Plays it out to Giannakopoulos. Kim again. This time hoping to find Sesnick. Lambatarides was there for the rebound. Sawyer tried his darndest, wasn't able to come away with possession. Now Atthew hounding down Jake Marshall and forces the centre half to concede a throw. Well, just out of play. Harry Sawyer has taken a seat. A little bit of concern, but Sawyer is in, well, he's back up now and marching back into his own half. I think just a little bit frustrated after that last physical contest. Long throw sent in. Lopez happy to let it bounce and take the claim. And Harry Sawyer does very much seem to be perfectly fine to continue. Which is very much good news for South Melbourne. That's a really strong challenge from Martinovic. And you see the response from Archibald. Lockie Keevers has more work to do to keep control of this game. Samuel Payos, who was on the receiving end of the challenge. And indeed it will be a yellow card for Michael Martinovic. Good to see the two players involved in the incident, Martinovic and Payos, making amends. Clasping hands as they both head back into position. And at the end of all of it, it's a Marko Jankovic free kick which will follow. Jankovic looks for Payos. He just let it run a little bit too far, so he wasn't able to keep the ball in play. But Payos too looks as if he'll be good to continue in this game. Payos and Sawyer, just about the two most influential players in this first 45. Archibald as well has been just about everywhere. Sawyer now, swing and a miss. And City once more go the safe route back to their goalkeeper. Martinovic uses Hennessy. And the press forces Hall to go long. Jankovic read it first. Hennessy wins an important contest, and, well, it was immaterial in the end as the offside flag brought an end to the attack. Pass from Lambatarides is under hit. In fact, it was Quinn, apologies, but the counter-attack is very much on. Down this left-hand side, Bernarda gets the shot away. And it flies narrowly high and wide. And that's the first time in a little while that we've seen one of those cutting-edge South Melbourne counter-attacks. But the City defenders getting back in time to apply enough pressure. Now as we head towards the final 5 minutes of this first half, it's turned into an uncomfortable pattern for the hosts. Well, we'll have to see if Nick Tolios brings out a changing game plan for the second half to try crawl their way back into this contest. Foul called on Harry Sawyer. Another one of the benefits that Sawyer brings to this South Melbourne team, his ability to win free kicks. And more often than not, dangerous positions, just with his strength and body positioning. It's Jankovic once again who will be charged with delivering this free kick. He found Marshall with the head. And that one was awkward to deal with. And the attempted restart was a little bit too far forward from Cesnik. The pass back from Martinovic is cut out by Archibald. Archibald looks to play through Sawyer. And a penalty has been awarded. Sawyer got there just in time to take it away from John Hall. And a frustrated Dandenong City coaching group and playing collective will, well, their frustrations will not be eased by that decision. Sawyer just poking it away from John Hall, and the subsequent contact enough in Lockie Keever's mind to point to the spot. And South Melbourne now with an opportunity to put this game just about beyond doubt by the time we reach the halftime break. Will be Harry Sawyer to take as he looks for his second goal of the evening. And what would be a 10th league goal to begin his campaign. Sawyer steps up and he fires it into the back of the net. Goal number 10 of the season for Harry Sawyer in the NPL. And with it, his South Melbourne team extend their lead. 3-0 the score. And Esteban Quintas's team look well on their way to securing another set of 3 points. They've really seized control of this game. After a tight first 10 or so minutes. And Dandenong City, well, it's been a nightmare first half for Nick Tolios. Very much not playing out the way that he would have envisaged. What resistance can City offer? Cesnik on the left-hand side. Uses Martinovic making the supporting run. Couldn't get the cross away. Archibald read it nicely. And now Sawyer looks to send South in the other direction. Payos is on his bike. It's a really important challenge from Martinovic. Well, the 3-0 scoreline is got a long way to securing the 3 points for South Melbourne already. A fourth would really be rubbing salt into the wounds. As we look to head in towards stoppage time in this first half. Fourth official Daniel Ilievsky confirming it'll just be the 2 minutes still to be played. Sawyer, who's now on a hat-trick tonight. Iaconis. Well, when you don't get many opportunities, it can be difficult to have a good first touch on any given evening, and we saw that right there. A workout in the end for Dandy City as they've got themselves a free kick. A late goal though in these next 90 seconds could just keep the door open ever so slightly for Dandy City. Giannakopoulos out to the right-hand side. Opportunity for Quinn. Cross sent in. Far too close to Javi Lopez, though. And the frustration continues for the hosts in tonight's game. That may well be the final real look at goal that either team has. As Hennessy, as he has been asked to do so often in this first 45 minutes, sends the ball high into the night sky. Yankovic now doing the same. Bernarda and Giannakopoulos compete. It's Bernarda who loses out to the numbers disadvantage. Evans, really important touch. And a clear-cut foul from a frustrated Kenny Athieu. And we're now very much at the discretion of Lockie Keefers as to how much more time there is to be played. Sawyer and Payos targeted with that long ball. And there won't be time to take the subsequent throw. Half-time at Frank Holohan Soccer Complex. And it's been a brilliant display from the league leader South Melbourne. 3 goals scored, 2 of them by Harry Sawyer, 1 by Ross Archibald. And Esteban Quintas's team are very much marching their way towards another 3 points and extending their lead atop the NPL Men's Victoria table. Big task for Dandenong City in the second 45. What will they come out with? What magic can Nick Tolios conjure? Join me on the other half of the break to find out, but at the halftime interval, it's Dandenong City 0, South Melbourne 3.
Did you mute it?
You have to take it up again.
Yeah. I won't forget. I only forgot once and then halfway through, oh shit!
Yeah, I reckon it was again.
Was it? 2 minutes in, as a goal came.
Yeah, what is your score?
Oh, well.
Well, we're back underway at Frank Holohan Soccer Complex. The halftime score, Dandenong City 0, South Melbourne 3. A really impressive first half performance from the league leaders, and a mammoth task for Dandy City if they want to work their way back into this contest. Their coach Nick Tolios has made a couple of halftime substitutions. Seb Hernando and Jackson Lino both brought into the game. They've taken the place of Brady Quinn and Damien Iaconis, so we'll see if that's able to spark a more effective response from Dandenong City. It wasn't a great first 45 for the hosts, although not the only people tonight who haven't had a great first half to this game. My name's Oscar Rutherford, and it's a pleasure that for the second 45, I'm joined by Brent Sternberg. Brent.
Yes, Oscar. Oh, it's good to be with you finally. I'm in the equivalent of a 3-0 hole as well. My car on the far side there. I'm still there, by the way. Thankfully, I'm not blocking anybody in. The fine Dandenong City cameraman is going to help me out, or at least I hope so, after the match. And Dandenong City, I did get to see most of that first half. I was down just behind the dugout of Nick Tolios, Dandenong City manager, and he was very frustrated at the lack of energy and lethargy as well. Two changes straight off the bat for the Dandenong City manager, as there's an opportunity here. For a corner kick, and there's a foul in the 18-yard box and a yellow card. Oscar, I might need you to fill me in as to how many yellow cards there were in that first half, because I did miss the first 15 minutes. I think I saw one towards the end of the first 45. Well, there's one thing for certain. There is another yellow card brandished by our referee this evening, Lachlan Keevers. That much I do know. Okay, back to Oscar.
Just the one shown to Michael Martinovic in that first half. And well, Brent, you said you saw most of that first 45 and you were up close and personal with Nick Tolios and hearing what he was demanding from his team. There wasn't a lot that went right for Dandy City in that first half, as we see Emil Payos on the far side. And well, I was wanting to get your thoughts on what you saw, Brent, and what Dandy City, what were they really struggling with? What do you think you need to see differently from the hosts if they're to crawl their way back into this game and just give themselves a slither of hope of getting something out of this contest, as borderline impossible as it sounds when you're 3-0 down against South Melbourne?
Yeah, well, a little bit more of this. When they get the football and they turn front on goalward, go with a little bit more zest and verve, not a lot of movement off the ball, and then little mistakes like that. Jackson Lino, one of the men who's come on in the second half. Big coming together there between he and the South Melbourne player. But overall, I mean, I have to tell you, I can't repeat everything that Nick Tolios said. I have to censor it rather heavily. But he was a frustrated figure down there, let me tell you. Frustrated with the mistakes that they were making on the ball, giving it away too easily, especially in the middle third of the pitch, which we know this is probably the one team in South Melbourne that you can least afford to do that. They are a team, South, that they don't really rely too much on. I'm not saying anything that everybody doesn't already know, but they don't rely too much on having possession and dictating the play. You know, they'll turn it over in midfield and then spring forward. We know what a great set-piece team they are as well. One of their goals came from a set-piece, and the other two came from Dandenong City mistakes. So that's all it takes, really, and now they're in a 3-0 hole. And like you said, Oscar, it's a long way back against any team, let alone the current league leaders.
The long ball skims along the head of Harry Sawyer, the man on a hat-trick in this second half. And the tackle from Martinovic takes the ball out of play, and as ever, Max Mikola makes his way across to deliver the first long throw of the second half. Mikola Sends it long. The ball hits the deck. The chance still very much alive. And just for a second, you thought Niall Bernardo might have snuck in and been able to poke it past John Hall in the Dandy City goal. Fortunately for the hosts, they did just enough to keep it out. And well, this is the part of the game where we saw so much of the trouble for the hosts in the first half. They could keep possession in their own half, but as soon as they attempted to venture forward, they were quickly cut out. Sawyer with a half chance. Hennessy was alert to the danger. And yet again, Sawyer involved as they just make life so difficult for Dandenong City.
Although I didn't see the entirety of that first half, Oscar, I want to get your thoughts on the performance of Ross Archibald, because I thought, from what I saw anyway, obviously he scored a goal, but he was sensational. One of the big off-season signings over the recent summer for South Melbourne. They had a raft of them, didn't they? But Ross came over from Port Melbourne. Normally a defender, but he's been pushed up the pitch a little by Esteban Quintas. And even as a defender, he's had a huge presence from set pieces. There's Bernardo. The cutback is just going to run away from Payos. Trying to charge down the young winger for South Melbourne is Jackson Lino, the fresh-legged second half substitute. And then it's away by Danny Kim. And Ross Archibald has been, honestly, one of my favourite players in this league for a little while, and he has been dominating in midfield.
Yeah, not too often that we've seen Ross Archibald spend so much time so high up the pitch. And like you say, he's been part of what's made South Melbourne so effective. I mean, I think you have to throw Emil Payos and Harry Sawyer in particular into that mix as well. Just the pressing and the constant harassing and haranguing of the Dandy City defence. They just haven't had a moment to breathe. And Ross Archibald's been a huge part of that. You mentioned as well the threat from set pieces, obviously getting himself on the score sheet too. It's been influential from Ross Archibald in the way that maybe we're not used to seeing him be so influential, but he's looked really, really good. And you have to give a huge amount of the credit to the number 21 for South Melbourne for the scoreline sitting the way it currently does. This is Giannakopoulos and Kim. Kim with the sweeping ball out towards Martinovic. Now back to Kim. Looks to slide it through towards Hernando. So Hernando, of course, the new signing from Manningham, appeared briefly set to join South Melbourne, but didn't materialise. Sesnick. Hoping for Lambatarides. Ball finds its way out towards the halftime substitute, Hernando. An opportunity a little bit further up the pitch for Dandy City. Giannakopoulos just about finds his way past Mikola. Martinovic was there in support. And a more positive spell of possession for Dandenong City, particularly in the South Melbourne half. Attempt to slide the ball through for Kenny Athew. Sesnick. Chips the ball through. And now Max Mikola hoping to send Harry Sawyer away. But some more positive play for Dandy City. Of course, you do have to acknowledge that South Melbourne have less of an incentive to get really high up the pitch. But nonetheless, I think Nick Tolios would take a degree of comfort from some of the improvements they've seen so far, Brent.
Yeah, and that's what's going to make it so difficult. You know, they're a hard side to break down anyway, South Melbourne, and now City really have to come out of their shell. 3 goals to at least get a result here. It would have to be a wild, wild turnaround for that to happen. But this is a wild, wild league with wild, wild car parks. You weren't supposed to laugh at that, Oscar. It looks like with Jackson Lino coming on at half-time, Martinovic has moved over to right back. I'm sure I saw him playing on the left in the first half, Martinovic. Here comes Lambettaridis, who's turned away by Halfpenny. Sesnick. Now Webster shoved as he got it in for Hernando. He goes looking for Kenny Afew. Headed away by Jankovic. And back out of play. Sesnick on the turn with Danny Kim. Oh, Lambettaridis, that was a lovely first touch to get himself out of a traffic jam. Giannakopoulos and now Martinovic. In towards Afew on the edge of the 18-yard box. Will lay it off for Kim. Kim finds the forehead of Hernando. Giannakopoulos. Apprehension written all over the faces of the Dandenong City players as they're trying to find a way through the white brick wall. Martinovic finds Lambettaridis in at the back post. Kenny Afew, that would have been something very special. In the end, it was high and wide and not particularly pretty. That's just the sort of goal that Kenny might have scored maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Even still, perhaps, but that one was well wide.
It wouldn't put it past him even in 2024, Kenny Afew. He's been in decent goal-scoring form this season, and they needed a bit of magic, I think, to pull them back into this game, the hosts, and that could have been it. Just didn't get the contact quite right. We will now see South Melbourne head to their bench for the first time as Andy Brennan is introduced into the contest. And he'll take the place of Max Mikkola. Mikkola, who started the game really brightly. That first 10 or 15 minutes, he was heavily involved. Not as much as the first half wore on. But Andy Brennan, he's been really effective, both as an impact sub and starting this season. And so he's got the majority of this second half to try and contribute to his team. And Lino couldn't trap the ball and will allow South, for the first time in a while, a little bit of possession. They waste no time though getting the ball forward as Sawyer looks to play through Brennan. Andy Brennan, the substitute, tries the ball across. And it's a really important contribution from Danny Kim. And really, it's moments like that that you've seen the difference between what these two teams are capable of in transition. South Melbourne, so lethal. Dandy City just don't have the same kinds of outlets. Part of that is, of course, also a philosophical matter for Nick Tolios. Webster and Sawyer again. Firmly, or a really strong physical battle. And it looks as if the yellow card has been shown to Harry Sawyer. I think for an elbow in the battle. Webster and Harry Sawyer have been really going at it for the whole game. Two of the more physical competitors in NPL Victoria, Brent.
It's been a running battle, hasn't it, between those two? You get a true appreciation for just how big and mean they are when you're standing on the touchline. I was just going to mention this has a look at the second half that threatens to just fizzle out. I'm sorry to say. But just on Andy Brennan, how good was he last week in that 3-0 win over Green Gully? He scored one of the three that was eventually voted goal of the week, and he was the man who created the other two. A wonderful player in his second season now at South Melbourne. And that speaks to the depth that Esteban Quintas has when players like Andy Brennan are having to come off the bench. I think he was in the starting 11 last week, but off the bench this evening. Referee Lockie Keever's just trying to get out of the way there. Giannakopoulos back with Hall. Brennan buzzing around. I must admit, before I ran into the car troubles, Oscar, I did come to this match this evening wondering how South Melbourne, being without the suspended Mario Barcia, might fare in midfield. Well, the answer is resoundingly fine, with a 3-0 lead. Accrued too many yellow cards, the Argentinian Mario Barcia. But he'll be back next week. In fact, he might be back on Wednesday night. I think I saw South Melbourne are in the Cup during the week. Good ball in for Kenny. Oh, it's a good save. It had to be as well. Lopez, Kenny might have been a little bit disappointed with the header there in terms of the placement. It was right at the reigning goalkeeper of the season. But I'm going to go out on a limb here, Oscar, and say that was Dandenong City's best chance of the match.
There was that opportunity for Valley Cessnock when there was a bit of a defensive mix-up about 15 minutes into the game, but must agree, Kenny Atthew, certainly his best chance of the night, and probably Dandy City's as well. Did remember correctly, South Melbourne back in action on Wednesday night for that Doherty Cup tie against Eastern Lions. Competition Dandy City are no longer in, having been knocked out by Preston in the previous round. Cross sent in deep. Bernardo was the target. And of course, if South Melbourne and Preston both win their Doherty Cup ties, we're set for a South Melbourne-Preston meeting in the next round, and what will be a huge night of Victorian football. A preview, if you will, of what will hopefully be on its way in the national second tier. Dandy City, I think, seeing the bigger picture and really taking one for the team with their early elimination. Cross sent in only as far as Webster. This is Jankovic. Plays it inside towards Halfpenny. And now Brennan taking up that more central position. And the long ball through is overhit. So Hall will use Webster. Webster, of course, one of the many players following Nick Tolios into the southeast from Bentley. And what's been a highly successful move for all of those parties involved. Well, we just heard in the grandstand the announcement of the score update from around the ground. Of course, for the duration of that first half, Moreland City leading Heidelberg at the Village. We again just see the game paused as Bernarda deemed to have infringed Jack Webster. But at the Olympic Village, Heidelberg did score twice in quick succession to reclaim the lead, and there's been a response again from Moreland City. So heading towards the end of that game, 2-2 the score, in what would be a massive point for Moreland City and a big missed opportunity for Heidelberg. Meanwhile, St Albans did pinch a goal back against Oakley Cannons, so at the breaker, Jack Edwards, 1-1 the score. So as things stand, both Heidelberg and Oakley dropping points, and South Melbourne taking all three. And with Avondale heading to George Andrews tomorrow night to take on Dandy Thunder, could turn out being a very good weekend for Esteban Quintas' side.
Yeah, open up the gap at the top, which would be nice. To be honest, Oscar, I'm still casting my mind to that potential cup clash between South Melbourne and Preston. Don't want to preempt anything. Long ball forward for Sawyer. Somehow brought it down to Archibald on the outside of the boots. He plays it out wide for Payos, who I thought was terrific in that first half. His would-be cross is smothered by Lino and outraces John Hall. The City hit on the counter here. Early release from Hernando looking for Cessnock. Cut out. And back in possession South Melbourne. Robust challenge, but fair one in midfield. Another handball call going the way of South. Oscar, did you mention Oceania Club of the Century? You know we're not allowed to do a South Melbourne game without mentioning that. Absolute powerhouse of a football club, and we may be seeing them for the final time this season in Victorian football. Here's an opportunity from Andy Brennan, who didn't quite hit that one as well as he hit the one last week in the comfy confines of Lakeside Stadium. Still trying to find their way out of the 3-0 hole here at Dandenong City. Lambatarides has Hernando on the far side. That's not a bad ball for Lino, who will bring it in towards the dangerous area. It was too close to Lopez, who parried it away. Afew again, the perpetual threat. Disappointing there from Halfpenny. Didn't give Harrison Sawyer much of a chance at all. So what were those two goals, Oscar, for Sawyer? Goals 9 and 10, were they, this season?
Yeah, goals 9 and 10 to his NPL tally. Going a goal a game. As South Melbourne extend their lead on top of the league table, Harry Sawyer extends his lead on top of the Golden Boot race. We just saw with that last attack from Dandy City, and the problem really when you let yourselves go 3-0 down, they've tested Harvey Lopez more in this first 20 minutes of the second half than they did for pretty much the whole of the first 45. But even then, there's no real sense of jeopardy or nerves for South Melbourne. And that's in part a credit to just really strong defensive shape of Esteban Quintas's team, but also just a reflection of South can afford to concede a goal if that is what happens, and they'll still have that 2-goal buffer. Payos out towards Bernarda, who goes with the left-footed cross. It's an important intervention from Hennessy, but Bernarda comes away with the ball again, puts it across, and Harry Sawyer has his hat-trick. Dogged determination from Noel Bernarda created the chance. And the third finish for Harry Sawyer is his simplest of the evening. Open goal, he taps it in, and South Melbourne have their fourth. And after a first 20 or so minutes in which Dandy City have looked a little bit more promising, South Melbourne go down the other end and punish them royally.
Yeah, I think you used the word simple there, Oscar. It's a good word to sum that up. Couldn't play their way out of trouble from deep in defence. I think it was Hennessy who made the fatal error. And well done by Bernarda, who had initially lost the ball, recovered quickly, and got it under the nose of John Hall. So Sawyer's 11th goal of the season, and it's probably the easiest one he's scored. Sesnick, his Lino, he hits that one first time. It's all a little mundane and hopeless at the moment for Dandenong City. It feels that way anyway. We mentioned a moment ago the powerhouse that South Melbourne are, but they are in a bit of a drought by their standards. It's been 8 seasons since their last league championship, 2016. The last time they were Kings of Victoria, but they've come mighty close, haven't they, the last 2 seasons, beaten badly in the last 2 grand finals. But they are playing like winners and would-be champions here this evening. It's good anticipation there from Lino. Halfpenny just banged that one into the face of poor old Andy Brennan, who then lost it out to Lambatarides. Never fear, it's back with Jake Marshall, and now Lopez. And these are, impressive performances from South Melbourne. Teams that want to win championships have to be able to just get on the road and, you know, come to Frank Holohan on a cool random Friday night in the middle of April and just play well, win, and just go home with the 3 points. It's a long and arduous 26-game season. In the regular season, that is, then finals to come. But sometimes teams with big aspirations, such as South Melbourne, just get on the road and get the 3 points, and that's what they've done here tonight. They're on the charge again. Bernarda. That's good defending from Hennessy, who slides on in and plays it out of touch. And a throw in the attacking third here for South Melbourne. Jordan Lampard to take. If you're asking me for my vote, the best left back in the top division, Lampard is my guy.
Well, a glowing review from Brent Sternberg for Jordan Lampard. Hasn't been overly involved tonight, but nor has he had to be, just with the way the game has played out. Says Nick into Hernando. Still Hernando, looks to return to his teammate, but Marshall was there to cut it out. Hernando restarts play quickly, and the ball long out to the opposite side. Lampardarides wasn't quite able to take the ball under his spell, and that'll bring the end to the attacking move for now. You mentioned just one of those typically difficult away games at Frank Holohan on a cold Friday night. They could have done worse in terms of the weather, South Melbourne. It's not quite the biting cold that will come over the next couple of months. But also, it's a highly impressive performance tonight, and it's come at a good time. We'll touch on that point in just a moment as Bernarda has space now on the counter. He goes cross field to Brennan. Andy Brennan, the substitute, goes with the left. Webster got his body in the way. Bernarda continuing the attack down the left-hand side. Cuts in, and still he continues. This is Brennan. Tried to turn his way through 3 Dandy City opponents. Eventually the numbers proved enough for the hosts. And now they look to hit quickly on the counter. Kenny Matthews' pass was just a little bit too heavy for Seb Hernando. And we'll revert to a more patient build-up. But you look ahead the next couple of weeks for South Melbourne after that Doherty Cup tie against 2nd Division Eastern Lions. It's another just notorious tough away game at JL Murphy when they'll take on Port Melbourne. And then it's a big one at Lakeside. Avondale come. 4 o'clock on the Saturday. It's a huge game. And with Avondale seemingly returning to some of their best form over the last couple of weeks, that could well be an absolute belter. South Melbourne readying another couple of substitutions. Dandy City as well will look to their bench again. Lampard inside to Halfpenny. Space out on the right-hand side. South don't quite look to exploit it just yet. Bernarda using his strength. The Lampard wasn't able to take possession. Sesnick inside to Webster, who wasn't exactly expecting it. And the pass is a little bit too far away from Lampardarides. Now Sawyer, the quick release, finds Harry Sawyer, looking for his 4th of the evening, goes the chip. And it just has a little bit too much height on it. Harry Sawyer bringing out the party trick somewhat, and that would have been the icing on the cake, Brent.
Well, the issue there is Sawyer is so big and strong, you just cannot let him get in behind the goal side because you can't stop him. Legally, that is. We're going to have a couple of 3 changes, in fact, for Dandenong City and a couple for South Melbourne. Lambeterides and Danny Kim coming off. Kurt Kawaku coming on. And Kyan Bryant is coming on as well. Cooper Halfpenny, I was going to ask you a question about him a moment ago, Oscar. I suppose I can still ask it, but he has made way. So I think we've got Boltong out there. And in midfield for South Melbourne, is it Aliopoulos? It's Lucas Inglise, my apologies. If I had been better prepared, I would have known that. But Kyan Bryant is playing this one back for Jack Webster. Halfpenny, obviously, the man who came in for the suspended Mario Barcia in midfield for South Melbourne. How did you rate his performance before being pulled?
Well, I think he played his role very admirably. It was, well, we'll pause the thought just a moment as Bryant looked as if he was getting him behind. But no, I thought he did a very serviceable job. It was one of those awkward games where, you know, South Melbourne weren't necessarily on the ball in the middle of the park all that often. But his work out of possession was an important component of the South Melbourne machine, and he played that role very impressively, I thought. Cooper Halfpenny, he's been getting more and more game time this season. Sawyer the target of the long ball. Brennan hoping to get him behind. Giannakopoulos goes back to his goalkeeper. Estevan Kindas looking towards some more youthful players in his starting 11 tonight. Yes, Halfpenny, also Emil Payos being brought into the 11, and they both had impressive performances. Fernando out towards Bryant. Still continuing with the run is Hernando. Bryant gets the shot away. A snap attempt at the end of the combination between the two substitutes. And Harvey Lopez was scrambling somewhat as the ball flew wide of his post. The announcement just made, and if I heard correctly, Brent, it sounded as if the call was that St Albans have taken the lead at Oakley. Indeed they have. It's a monumental upset that would be if St Albans were able to secure the 3 points there. Confirmation as well. Then a late goal from Josh Pinn has secured all 3 points from Heidelberg, so Johnny A's team survive a real scare. Just noticing behind play, Jack Webster has been having a little bit of physical trouble, just looked a bit uncomfortable in one of his legs. But having communicated with his bench, he looks as if he'll be okay to continue. It would take a bit more than a little bit of soreness to force Jack Webster out of a game. Sesnick has Lino making the run out on the left-hand side. Cross comes in first time towards Athieu. Hernando continues with his attempt. And there's some appeals for a penalty from the Dandy City technical area. Daniel Ilievsky unmoved by it. And the play will be stopped for a free kick South Melbourne's way.
Yeah, hamstring it looked like Jack Webster was struggling with, but looks like he's okay now. Maybe just a momentary cramp. It was Ross Archibald and Noel Bernarda coming off a few moments ago for South Melbourne, being replaced by Inglise and Boltong. Going deep into their squad this evening, South Melbourne. Lampard in at the back post. It's kept away from Tong by Hennessy. 3-on-4 up ahead for Dandenong City. Hernando swings it out. They'll try the right-hand side here, City. Hernando. To the byline they go. Oh, Athia trying to sneak it in at the near post, and in the end was denied by the post. Lopez rooted to the spot, didn't know an awful lot about it. Another half opportunity for Dandenong City's marksman up front. But he's fed on scraps this evening, has Kenny Athia. I must say, when they announced that St Albans had scored that goal, there was a nice little cheer that went around Frank Holohan. Their Croatian friends, of course. A wonderful friendly rivalry. Whoa. Swinging him. I'm going to say Lampard meant that. Of course he did. He's my when I mentioned he was, in my humble opinion, not that it means anything, the best left-back in the top division, I should say. Dandenong City have a wonderful left-back of their own who's out at the moment injured, but Jacob Alexander, one of the best. Here's another battle on the touchline between Webster and Sawyer for a throw-in, of all things. They'd scrap over anything, those two. They're probably going to scrap over who can exit the car park first. And they're going to get out a lot easier than I will. Payos can't control that one. You mentioned coming here to Frank Holohan, and the NPL Victoria Top Flight is a division that is full of banana skins for the aspiring championship teams as they come all the way back to Lopez here. I think Dandenong City have only lost 3 home games dating back to the start of last season, so they've got a handy fortress here at home. Hernando lifting one in. Matthew get clear. He plays it back with Sesnick, who ran into a bit of a roadblock at the byline. It's stayed in, and eventually Sesnick played it really well. He let it dribble out, and a corner kick here for Dandenong City, which they're taking quickly. Bryant, and now Hernando. Halfpenny doesn't quite deal with it. Matthew's buzzing around, and eventually cleared away by Marshall. So finally starting to get some retention in terms of possession, Dandenong City, but far too late, you feel. That's not a bad ball in. Webster is there, tried to bring it down, and his shot was smothered by the desperate Yankovic. It's back here with Sesnick, who got right underneath it. Opportunities starting to come for Dandenong City, but still the back of the net eludes them.
Well, he's been heavily involved in the contest all night, Jack Webster, and just about his direct opponent, Harry Sawyer, scored a hat-trick, so he won't exactly take fond memories from tonight's game, but if he'd been able to score, he would have at least been able to take 1 point back with him in that one-on-one battle. South Melbourne will take the opportunity to utilise their bench again. And looks as if Jack Painter-Andrews will be making an appearance, a player who we haven't seen a huge amount of for quite a while, Jack Painter-Andrews. That's as well as Christian Inglesi joining Lucas on the park. And the players brought off. Emil Payos making his way from the park, as is Morgan Evans, a couple of the youngsters being brought off after a comprehensive performance. Mr. Van Kindas keeping the legs fresh and not looking to take any risks in the closing stages of this contest.
Yeah, I think Jack Painter-Andrews was actually injured on match day 1 from memory, or match day 2 perhaps, so wonderful to see Jack back.
Another one of the premier fullbacks in this competition is Jack Painter-Andrews. You imagine adding him to this South Melbourne team, which is already looking formidable. Well, the pressure's on for, you'd imagine, Morgan Evans attempting to keep his spot if Jack Painter-Andrews can get himself back to full fitness. Bryant plays it in towards Hernando. This is Hamakiotis. Back to Hernando. Webster. Looks to loft the ball over. Wasn't on the same page as Hamakiotis. And Jordan Lampard wisely lets the ball run. And his goalkeeper will take his time as he trudges over to collect the ball for the goal kick. Javi Lopez certainly not feeling especially rushed at the moment. Well, you mentioned the cheer that went around the ground for the announcement of the second St Albans goal, the Croatian club relationship. And from a footballing sense, South Melbourne, you think, would also be quite happy with that as a result. Sawyer now has Brennan making the run in behind. And nicely read by Hall. Long ball up towards Athieu. Tussling with Jankovic, and illegally so, deems Lockie Keevers. So Dandy City will get their chance from pretty decent set piece position. Will be Hamakiotis who races over to take it, and perhaps here will be the route to a goal this evening for Dandy City.
Well, we mentioned a moment ago that Lopez has had a pretty quiet night between the posts for South Melbourne, which is always a good sign. He'll be hoping that that can remain the case here. So it's Hamakiotis, the second half substitute, the left footer. Plenty of reinforcements in the dark blue. Webster's there again. He's denied by the crossbar. And it may have taken a touch as well on the defender, off the defender I should say, on the way through. So they've hit the woodwork twice in the past 5 or 6 minutes here, Dandy City. They want to give their fans at least a goal to cheer about. And that corner's not going to amount to much. Over comes Kuaku. Inglise trying to needle one in behind for Tong. Decent defending enough from Bryant. Swings one down the line. It's well one back though by Brennan, who I think was fouled. Lockie Keevers wanted to allow the advantage. It's coming back now. Yeah, Lopez, who of course kept a clean sheet in the win over Green Gully last week, but you'll remember Oscar had to save 2 penalties. Remember the first one, he came off his line, so it was retaken. Yeah, he just saved the second one, because that's just what he does.
It is the blessing and the curse of playing in such a successful team like South Melbourne when you're Javi Lopez and you're probably the best goalkeeper in the competition. So we see that ball sent in and Hall makes the claim. You don't always get as involved in games as you might warrant. Will be a yellow card handed out to, I think it's Marko Jankovic, who was just a little bit slow making his way back into his defensive line. But as you hear Javi Lopez barking out instructions to his teammates as well, tells you plenty of his role in this team isn't just reduced to stunning saves and keeping penalties out. This is Sawyer now. Thought about the quick release for Christian Inglese. And that foul committed there by Lucas Inglese. Now Bryant. Inside towards Hamakiotis. Making the support was Giannakopoulos. Hamakiotis now tried to release Lino. But it always looked as if it had a little bit too much juice on it. Looking ahead for Dandenong City in the next couple of weeks, as mentioned, no longer in the Doherty Cup competition. They head on the road for a couple of weeks. As we do just get confirmation that there'll be 4 minutes of stoppage time to be played. Away games against Manningham and Port Melbourne, so both of these teams head to Jail Murphy over the next few weeks. This is Sawyer, look to release Tong, and Bryant forced to concede the corner. The game against Manningham next week at Petty's Reserve, a really difficult ground to go to, as we've seen some of the big scalps that Manningham have taken this season, including giving an almighty fright to South Melbourne early on in the campaign, going 2-0 up before South clawed it back and ran out 5-2 winners in the end. Corner now to be sent in. It's into a central area. Inglazer with the header and Sawyer with the shot. Got well under it though and flew high above the crossbar. Webster wasting no time as he looks to send the ball up to the other end of the park. For that game against Manningham, the two overperforming perhaps promoted teams, well perhaps overperforming is harsh, the exceeding expectations teams, both finding themselves in and around the middle of the pack this season, which hasn't been an easy task for promoted teams in recent seasons. Hernando continues his run, but Inglazer did enough to force it out for the throw.
Well, how well are our promoted teams doing in the men and the women's? Essendon Royals and Brunswick Juventus in the NPLW, they're flying. And Dandenong City, this is going to be 4 games winless now on the bounce, but 7th on the table coming into tonight, and had they have sprung a surprise and got a win, they could have jumped into the top 6 momentarily. South Melbourne will start with 8 wins and 2 draws in the first 10. As Giannakopoulos trickles that one wide, Lopez threw it the whole way. So it's as good a start as the boys from Lakeside could have hoped through match day 10. Still alive in the cup, as we mentioned. Haven't lost all year. That's amazing. In competitive fixtures, of course. And you'd imagine, this is a club with pretty good foresight. They know that they're going to go up and play in the National Second Division, and I don't think they would want to leave the NPL Victoria with 3 straight grand final losses of Sawyer. Well, that would have been a stunner to end all stunners from well downtown. You'll score one like that this season, Harry Sawyer, don't worry. Dandy City on the attack, one last attack, fizzles out to not that much. And that may well be the last little thrust forward they have on what has been a frustrating evening at home tonight.
Entering now the final 30 seconds of nominated stoppage time. Perhaps time for one last thrust forward for the hosts. This is Sesnick. It's turned away by Inglazer. Now Bryant gets the shot away, but scuffed it really. And a comfortable claim for Javi Lopez, which will surely be the final action of the game. And indeed it is. Lockie Keevers blows the full-time whistle. South Melbourne jump further on top, or further ahead on top of the NPL Men's Victoria ladder. A comprehensive 4-0 win away from home at Frank Holohan Soccer Complex. Harry Sawyer, the star of the show, with a hat-trick, which takes his league goals tally to 11 so far in season 2024. He will be tough to catch in that Golden Boot race. There were some more positive signs from Dandy City in the second half. But in the end, Brent, they just didn't quite have what it took to really take it up to South Melbourne tonight.
Yeah, and they won't be the last team that suffer this sort of fate. Good night for South Melbourne. 4-0 scoreline always looks lovely and complete. And a good night for them, coming away, banding together, getting a solid win against a tricky opponent away from home and getting some minutes into some of their guys that are probably a bit further down the depth chart, you know, may not see too much time as we get towards the points end. Dandenong City, a promising start to the season, has now just started to skid a little. I'm not going to say bogged, has started to skid a little bit over the last 4 games. But even still, you know, promising signs when the game started to stretch open a little bit in those closing minutes. They would have liked to have gotten a result, wouldn't they, and continued to keep pace with the top 6. But it'll be back to the drawing board for Nick Tolios' men next week.
Well, that's all the time that we have tonight from Frank Holohan. Ivan Oscar Rutherford, belatedly joined by Brent Sternberg, who's overcome significant barriers to be here tonight. But in the end, the full-time score, Dandenong City 0, South Melbourne 4.